They say I was obsessed with perfection, but that's only a clinical word. Actually, I was consumed by retribution, fueled by a deep-seated, painful need to achieve the impossible standard that had been set by my father. See, my father, he was also a dentist, and his passion wasn't just patient care, but a cruel fixation on dental health as a measure of moral worth. And my childhood wasn't filled with kindness, but with chastisement and humiliation. My own teeth were stubbornly imperfect, prone to slight misalignment and a faint yellow tinge, a visible failure he constantly held against me. Every morning, every evening, I had to stand before him for the inspection. "Arthur, look at this shame," he would sneer, shining his penlight on my gums. "A dentist's son must present a flawless face to the world. Anything less is a display of poor character. Go fix it." The constant drilling, both literal and psychological, the icy sting of his disapproval, warped my perception of my own body. He had successfully convinced me that my natural teeth were a source of profound, unforgivable inadequacy. This constant humiliation, the aching resentment for my own flawed natural form, became the primary fuel of my dark ambition. Now, as Dr. Payne, I'd smile, a stretch of bone and enamel that silenced rooms. They adored the facade, the impossible, purulescent uniformity. But they were worshiping a mosaic of their friends, their neighbors, and the forgotten dead. My perfection was their blindness. I convinced myself that if the teeth God gave me were inadequate, I had the right to seek superior, external replacements. My purpose became clear. I was the collector, the curator, the man ordained to build the perfect smile, brick by stolen brick, finally escaping my father's damning judgment. The local funeral home offered me sanctuary. I volunteered to assist with restorative work, particularly teeth and jaw reconstruction. Mr. Ellis, the director, was kind but simple. He saw a professional dedicated to dignity, but all I saw was an unlimited supply. I spent hours in the preparation room, not applying synthetic putty, but running my gloved hand over the teeth of the newly deceased. The cold, unyielding silence of the corpses was deeply comforting. I would spend 20 minutes restoring a missing bicuspid, and then an hour just charting the healthy molars, feeling the distinct texture of the dead enamel. Ellis would often poke his head in, seeing me hunched over the deceased with unnerving intensity. "Arthur, you're a fanatic, man," Ellis once chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Most doctors are trying to get out of here. You just love the craft, don't you?" "Only striving for anatomical perfection, Mr. Ellis," I'd have replied smoothly, my eyes never leaving the mouth. He'd shake his head and pass it off, believing I was simply a man consumed by the love of my craft. He never realized I was charting which teeth would come home with me. The exchange, my own teeth for the corpse's brittle ivory, was the price of my transformation. In my basement, a cathedral of self-mutilation. I'd strap myself in, the halogen lamp searing the room. The drill would begin its high-pitched scream, cutting the gum line, the friction a searing, maddening vibration that ran to my core. I would cut deep, separating the ligament, smelling the scorched tissue and hot, musky blood. Then came the forceps, heavy, industrial chrome. I'd apply the leverage, slowly, methodically, feeling the roots groan in protest, and the alveolar bone giving way with a deep, sickening, cracking sound. And when the tooth finally gave, the wet, fibrous snap of the ligament was followed by a geyser of hot venous blood that splattered the ceiling. That pain was proof of my worthiness. I would immediately place the cold, sterilized trophy into the fresh, gaping wound, anchoring the dead root to my living bone with a potent, dark polymer. In the hours that followed were a blinding hell of throbbing, burning pain, a searing ache that felt like my skull was being split with a wedge. And only the massive, pharmaceutical grade of medication brought silence, allowing me to stare into the mirror, my lips drawn back in a grim, satisfying smile. A new sentinel had been added to the cathedral. Yet, the corpse teeth, dull and mute, soon felt insufficient. I needed vitality. I needed the aggressive, vibrant whiteness of enamel still rooted in the blood and breath of a living host. And my justification was simple. They were unworthy custodians. And I was the only one truly capable of appreciating the divine gift. The thrill was in the subversion of trust. I would track their schedules, calculate the deepest trough of their sleep, and slip inside their homes. I delivered a custom, synthesized benzo analog, pumped subtly into their sealed bedrooms via a silent, ultrafine mist. The goal? To ensure not just unconsciousness, but a state of deep, chemical helplessness, a stupor that mimicked death. I would lift them from their beds, a terrifying limp, inert weight, and transport them to the basement. They were mine, transported in a state of utter, inviolable submission. In the basement, they were utterly at my mercy, strapped, head clamped, the powerful, specialized anesthesia machine humming softly, a psychological prop, more than a necessity. The beauty was their total stiffness. I'd often wait, staring at their perfect teeth, the soft light glistening on the unblemished enamel. Their body was a vessel, and I was about to claim the treasure it guarded. When I started the excision, there was no longer the brief flicker of terror in their eyes. There was only the dark, vacant stare of the profoundly sedated. Yet, the trauma remained. The high-pitched screeching whine of the drill cutting into the soft root sheath, the bone-jarring vibration, the final explosive crunch of the extraction. All of it translated into involuntary muscle spasms, a deep, unsettling twitch in their arms. I would lift the tooth, hot, dripping, imperfect, and hold it close, the raw warmth of the living root confirming my power. Yet, 2 of them failed. Their systems failed. The fear of chaos was immense, but the need to protect the collection was paramount. The disposal was my darkest ritual. I moved the bodies into a heavy plastic sheet, and using the bone saws and surgical scalpels I reserved for this work, I would dismember them into manageable components. The smell was overwhelming, a rank, thick mix of metallic blood, bile, and sedatives. I worked with a clinical ferocity, severing the joints, separating the torso from the limbs, allowing the visceral fluids to drain into a central basin. I used heavy, industrial-grade plastic drums filled with corrosive chemicals, sealing the remains, one section at a time. It was a terrifying, grueling labor, but the resulting silence was worth it. One of my unfortunate victims, Mrs. Henderson, came to my practice the following day, complaining of the electric shock of pain from the crude raisin filler I placed. As I calmed her fears and prescribed my painkiller, I smiled. That beautiful, perfect incisor she was looking at in my mouth was actually hers. It was still warm, still resonant with her life force. I was looking at her with a piece of her own body embedded in mine. The psychological thrill was absolute. She thanked the man who had violated her, trusting the teeth that had been stolen from her. Soon enough, the case broke, and I vanished. I lived the rest of my life as a shadow, growing older, yet maintaining a smile that defied time. My new life was dominated by a single, terrifying duty: preserving the collection in my own mouth. My body withered, but the teeth remained defiant. They were my immortal contribution, a perfect edifice of stolen vitality. Each night, before my narcotic sleep, I would spend an hour in obsessive maintenance, probing the gum lines where the foreign roots had anchored, inspecting the dark polymer for any sign of decay or rejection. I lived in constant fear of a fracture, a rejection, a failure that would expose the gruesome patchwork reality. The agony of my youth was replaced by the anxiety of old age, the fear of erosion. I carried my crimes, physically, in my mouth until the very end. I died peacefully at 88, sitting in an armchair, a book lying open on my lap, and my lips slightly parted in a final, serene, unnatural smile. When the subject arrived in the morgue, the most immediate anomaly was the detention. Dr. Reyes, the lead medical examiner, initially dismissed the teeth as expensive, high-quality cosmetic work, but the unnatural density and flawless symmetry for an octogenarian quickly mandated a specialized forensic examination. Using X-rays and high-resolution imaging, they began to isolate the startling truth. The first molar they excised revealed that the tooth was not connected to the jaw by native tissue. Instead, the root was held in place by an extensive, dark chemical cement, the same foul synthetic glue found in the abandoned Crestwood basement years ago. "Marco, this is not a natural fusion," Dr. Reyes stated, his voice hushed. "The roots are completely sealed in this thick chemical sealant. And look at the jawbone. There's profound evidence of repeated surgical trauma. This entire jaw is a scar." The laboratory test that followed confirmed the horrifying truth. The 28 implanted teeth were all foreign transplants, meaning they originated from different human beings. More disturbingly, genetic fingerprinting shockingly revealed that the teeth belonged to at least 10 distinct individuals, and possibly more. The teeth were a gruesome collection, mismatched in age and genetic profile, yet meticulously fused together by the obsessive maintenance of a dedicated madman. Each tooth was a silent, permanent record of a violent, forced transplantation. Dr. Reyes stared at the specimen, the jawbone of the late Dr. Payne. It was no longer a corpse. It was a macabre, living archive, a physical repository of identified human trauma. The beautiful smile was a forensic road map to a dozen cold cases, a mosaic constructed from the missing. The official report would classify the finding as full mouth foreign teeth transplantation and surgical mutilation, indicative of serial homicidal activity. But the report offered no names, no dates, only the unsettling certainty that the full history, the identity of the 10 known donors, the depth of Dr. Payne's work in other countries, the exact moment he'd harvested Miss Henderson's incisor, was now buried permanently with the man who owned it. The truth was partial, terrifying, and forever incomplete, leaving an eerie, haunting silence where the answers should have been.